Thank you very much again. We will move over now to a fourth panel. And the fourth panel, it's going to be a little bit different, as I anticipated before, because we will do that a little bit in terms of fireside chat. And with that, I would love to ask on stage Francesco Bonfiglio, basically for a topic that I announced in the very beginning that will bring us also some sneak previews. We're actually looking a little bit at something that could bring an answer to many of the topics discussed in the last almost 2 hours. And, we brought up certain challenges, concerns, expectations. We talked about the budgets that Europe wants to furthermore invest, which is fantastic. But we also learned there is lots of differences between Europe and the US and the challenges that the current cloud service providers are facing in sustainably creating greater success. And with that, I have the impression we may have some answers that are at the horizon that we would be very interested to now hear a little bit more about. So with that, I would like to ask Francesco, who is the CEO of Dynamo, and thank you very much for joining and having the time today, to tell us a little bit about, so after the Digital Europe program, other projects like the EPSI project, the work done in Gaia X, also through your leadership, obviously, for many years. Do you really believe we need yet another thing, something new like Dynamo at the end?
Well, yes, indeed. We do need something new. And the point is not that all these initiatives have not produced or are not producing results. But that, unfortunately, the key issue, which is the marginal relevance in the local and global market of the European industry of cloud and technology, has not changed at all. So actually, it has dramatically worsened in time. It is therefore evident, in my opinion, that we need to do something new, something different. And if we want to change the market, we must act in the market. So Dynamo is born with a clear mission to act in the market, to level the playing field, increasing the competitiveness and the relevance of European providers of cloud services. So if we look at the European data strategy as announced by President von der Leyen in 2019, that was very clear. On the one hand, Europe needs to digitalize their value chains, and this happens through the creation of the nowadays well-known concept of common data spaces. So common data spaces are the digitalization of value chain in many sectors. On the other hand, on the right side of this slide here, Europe needs to create a computing continuum between cloud and edge, or if you want, this means to create common cloud spaces, which are necessary to run common data spaces. It's quite logical, but it turned out that we started doing pretty well in building common data spaces through, for example, many new projects like Catena X and alike that many know by now, but no similar projects have yet been created a true common European cloud space, without which even creating good European data spaces will continue to run and leave control, and in the end, release the big portion of the value created through common data spaces to non-European platforms. So let's look at the facts. We are almost halfway through the 10 years digital decade now. It's 2024, and we started in 2020. So this is going to end in 2030. So on the good side, we saw the cloud market growing threefold. So in 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, the market tripled. And the data economy is becoming real. 90% of the Standard & Poor's index is in fact made of intangible assets, but intangible means selling information, and information means data. So 90% of real economy is already data economy. On the bad side, we see that the European cloud service providers collectively have seen their market share falling down below 10% in the same period. And 90% of the data we decide to give away or give out to data platforms of any type, our email platforms, our data sharing or social platform, are being managed by the control planes of mainly US platforms. So this means that of the 200 plus billions allocated by Europe, including the recovery funds, the IPSI, the Digital Europe program, and many others, we must expect a big portion, some analysts say not less than 50%, to go, as a matter of fact, over the ocean. Why is that? Because of the adoption of non-European data platforms. But why is that? What are the alternatives we have today? So basically, we have the hyperscalers, which are great. They are just great, but they also have weaknesses. Also, we have European providers, and many they are just weak. And surely they have weaknesses, but as well, surely they have strengths. So interestingly enough, if you look at this picture, strengths and weaknesses are exactly complementary between hyperscalers and European players. But then we also have European projects and foundations that we heard today. So I thank you very much, all the guests and the speakers, because it was very interesting. So the aim of these initiatives, the European initiatives and projects, are to set common standards and blueprint, but they cannot act commercially in the market. They cannot invest in private ventures, and they cannot exclude, in virtue of the antitrust and competition law, non-European actors. So again, Dynamo does something different. We want to build the largest one-stop place for the exchange of European cloud services, a B2B marketplace accessible by European providers only, where each participant can resell the sum of all others offering, thus increasing its capacity, its portfolio, and its relevance to the market. The result is the same of a large merger and acquisition, with the difference that you don't spend billions, if not trillions, to do it, and with the difference that nobody is acquired by anyone, but all become part of the same virtual, single, large cloud service provider. So in this way, each Dynamo participant keeps selling its own services, but now he can fill the gap of his customer demand, because not everybody, every single player does not have everything, does not have the full service, the full portfolio, the full territory coverage. So everyone can now leverage on the others in a cooperative model. In this way, customer retention, territory growth, cross-selling, upselling, new sales, and the overall market relevance increase for each of the participants, which maintain their independence in the market whilst becoming part and showing like the owner of a virtual single larger provider. So in a nutshell, Dynamo is a commercial federation, a cooperative model where nobody loses and everybody wins.
So, Francesco, I think this was a very insightful presentation, because I think we can understand the mechanisms now a little bit better that you have in mind. I was just wondering, you're actually talking about a collaborative model between all the cloud service providers that would love to join such a model. And I think it sounds really logical. We also heard directions, or let me say comments to go in these directions from the panel of that we just had, panel number 2 with the cloud service providers. Really, the collaboration could be key. But if that's so logical, why hasn't this happened before, and why could it maybe now become a success?
Oh, that's a very good question. There are several reasons why something has not happened before that can work now. In this specific case, first of all, you need to reach the point where everybody understands and agrees that without a collaborative and cooperative approach, nobody will be able to compete or even survive in the future. And I think this awareness is now vivid in all the cloud service providers and justified by the numbers I was showing before. So the market loss, so moving from the 10% of market share we have today, which used to be 26% just in 2017, to zero is going to take no more than 3 to 5 years, unless the trend is not changed, unless something new and different happens. So there is also then the dimension of the complexity of such a platform. So if you really want to do something like Dynamo, which means uniting multiple providers under the single platform for qualification of the participants, the verification of the service credentials, also according to standards like GAIA-X, and the verification against the European regulation, the publishing of the services in a single catalog, the automated provisioning from multiple different cloud management platforms, the billing, the metering, the order management, and all under the same terms and conditions at service level. So it's simply very complex, and there is no platform available off the shelf in the market doing this, and there is no project doing such a thing, not yet. But last but not least, we need to consider the unsatisfied expectation, like it or not, from the market that something like this was done by some public institutions. Why is that? Because in fact, if you think about the model of Dynamo, it's the same model of a utility platform because it provides the benefit to all the participants and not to the owner of the platform. So everybody was expecting in the past that something like this, yes, was created, but it was created by some public institution, by some publicly funded project. But not being this possible because the impossibility of funding private initiatives, of excluding non-European operators from an initiative like this, etc., Dynamo decided to kickstart it from a private standpoint, from a private initiative. But of course, we hope that in time, this will be supported by many and multiple shareholders from the private and the public. So this is the hope.
So I think this is great news, and I also believe this is more than just hope, but already carried on to really clear facts, because it's on the way. Dynamo is on its way. And maybe we can even disclose, Francesco, that will be very shortly press release with all the facts and figures around it. But I have a question. If this is the great news and if this is the way forward, what would you answer to those who have the questions if Europe shouldn't build yet another copy of let's say what our US peers have been already developing and selling in Europe, and obviously this is connected to the questions would make Dynamo or this collaboration then so unique to make it not only a copy but to make it special and sustainably successful.
Yeah, first of all, and let me give some sneak preview, as you said, of Dynamo, because you have to be aware that Dynamo was started physically, as was constituted as a legal entity in February 24. And now, as we speak, literally as we speak, in 1 week or two, we will have a new version of the website published showing how to use Dynamo and a demo platform. It's a virtual tour, of course. You cannot just sell services. Why? Because we have started the onboarding phase. So we are already collecting partners that decided to join Dynamo to publish their services and resell everybody else's. So it's something that will start, let me say, selling services on the market no later than the end of this year. We need to run very fast. You asked me a very specific question about do I believe or not in a big champion. Some people know that I'm not a strong believer in the big European champion, but let me explain you why. If you want to win against the competition, there are some golden rules. First of all, don't try to replicate what they have already done, because in the best case, you will be a follower and they will always win and continue to beat you. Second, don't make the same mistakes. even if we had a European hyperscaler, forcing the market to choose between an American or a European lock-in will not be the solution. We will find ourselves in the same problem. Third, do something different that the market needs and be the first doing it. And what the market needs and wants is clear by now. We heard it from all the speakers: interoperability, controllability, transparency, in a nutshell, trustability of providers, and freedom of choice, freedom to choose, control, and change them with no lock-ins, no portability issues, no reversibility, blockage, or egress fees of any type. So a single European champion or a small number of European gatekeepers cannot be the solution. But of course, increasing the size and capacity of European providers is a necessary and good trend. The real difference of Dynamo, in my opinion, is that the cooperative model is completely different. It has three key differentiators that makes it unprecedented. One is the interoperability. So to create a cooperative platform, you need common rules, a common contract, common exchange and provisioning mechanisms, and finally, common APIs as much as possible to let the participants of a cooperative collaborate. And the more they collaborate, the more can benefit all of them. So it's not forceful. Everybody will try to have common rules, to have common APIs, and to adhere to these common mechanisms, because this will save cost and will increase their market opportunities. You don't need large investments, and this is different from what typically big investments made by a single operator to become bigger through, for example, merger and acquisition will do, because large investments will try to create large lock-in in order to increase the market share. It's natural. If you are big, you don't want to lose the market. If you instead you are part of a big ensemble, you can win through the collaboration and the interoperability. The second differentiator is the scalability of the model, because to make merger and acquisition become big, you need a lot of money. Different from merger and acquisition, a cooperative can grow endless, attracting and grouping any large and small companies, traditional or innovative, and not limited to the amount of capital of an individual private or public investor. Third is the speed of execution, because with the cooperative model, you leverage the existing assets instead of creating something from scratch or new assets without incurring the cost of market or the losses caused by a large reorganization that merger and acquisition force. There is one interesting thing to consider. One of the difficulties in adopting different solutions that the three well-known American gatekeepers is that they are unknown and difficult to find. But the thing is that they are there. So let me give you an example, because I pretty much like this slide, and I run a simple example. This is, now please, the next slide. Yeah, this is an example of what Claude AI is a kind of ChatGPT. So it's a very well-known Gen AI platform, by the way, developed by two Italians living in the Valley. This is a slide that tells us what the answer to the question, what are the key European alternatives to the top sellers of Microsoft, AWS, and GCP are. So I don't know you, but I'm pretty sure that not all of these offerings were known or are known to all of you. And this is part of the problem. So it's incredible how, through a cooperative model like Dynamo, hundreds of European well-known or less known or unknown services can come to the light, become available in a one-stop place, and build the richness and critical mass of services that we need to create a concrete and real European cloud alternative.
Actually, I see a question coming in. Maybe we can allow to go for this. Emanuele, I think you had one. Is that correct?
Good afternoon, Francesco, and thanks for all the clarification and of bringing this idea, which I think was 5 years ago in the heads of the commission and of the data economy communication and the data strategy. So it's good to see this materializing. I'm not going to enter into the technical difficulties. That must be tremendous. But there's an aspect which wasn't clear so far, which is what is it for the participants to the marketplace? I'm not sure it's I'm using the right words, but for the smaller European players, what's in it for them in terms of business model? What are there fees? Do they get? Does the interest come because they suddenly get a bigger market or easier sales, or how does that work? What's the business model behind for them?
That's a very good question. It looks like we prepared it, but it's not true. So there is two business models, of course. The one of Dynamo, which is a support business model. So Dynamo asks the participants to pay a subscription fee and a variable fee proportional to the volume transacted, which means also because we are making a promotion for the first joiners to remove the subscription fee. Basically, if you sell, you will pay a percentage of what you have earned. If you don't sell, you pay nothing. So this is the business model to support Dynamo, because the benefit of Dynamo is when everybody sells. If nobody sells, Dynamo cannot make money. That's why I was talking about the utility platform. The business model for the participants is extremely important. The problem of the European cloud service providers is well known. It's visibility, they are small. It's territory rich, they typically regional. It's scalability, they don't have the resources to scale infinitively or most of the time to satisfy all the demand of their customers. So all of a sudden, they can keep selling their own stuff, but they can resell their services from other participants. What do they earn? First of all, they don't lose the customer, and this is very important. Typically, when you cannot respond to a bid, you give up, or maybe you partner with a system integrator that maybe will choose another provider because you're too small. But if you all of a sudden become part of a very big virtual single marketplace where you have enough critical mass of resources, there is no reason to lose your relation with your customer. Also, you can increase your territory because every participant acts like a reseller. So this is a very important point because not many people understand that one of the big differences between the hyperscalers and the European providers is that the hyperscalers make 90%, just to use a typical number, I could say 99% of their business indirectly. So they do not sell directly, but they sell through their partner network. In Europe, it's the opposite. In Europe, 90%, if not more, of the business is done directly. This is why we are limited. This is also why we are limited. Because you can imagine that if you have a network of partners reselling all over, you can increase the reach. You can increase the size of your market. But to do that, you also need the critical mass to be able to serve those customers. So Dynamo compensate on both sides, creates a virtual large reselling network, and enlarge the portfolio of each participant to the sum of everybody. Last but not least, I think that we need to consider that Europe does not have a known single brand of technology and cloud. And let's not forget that customers buy based on trust, but trust sometimes is also related to gut feeling. I buy this technology because everybody buys this technology. I use that provider because everybody uses that provider. So intrinsically, I trust this technology and I trust this provider. But if we create something that is big enough to group as many providers as possible under the same head, which means under the same rules, under the same verification methods, under the same verification of the compliance to the regulation, and under the same virtual single brand, this will also have the chance to create a European alternative that is missing.
That was a very long answer, Francesco, but I would say allowed us, and thanks to the very good, really good question of Manuel, to get a bigger picture how a business model could work and for the benefit of home. And I think it was also helpful to get this explanation, Francesco, for the different business models. We would still have a minute or so for one more question if there was. Just looking maybe at Manuel, do you have one more, or was that sufficiently complete? It was yeah, super. Okay, thank you so much. Then, of course, I'm quite sure many of you have many more questions. We're now coming towards the end of our. Oh, here we have Alice. Alice, do you have one question to Francesco? We have a minute more if we could.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if you can see my
yes,
camera
we
is
can.
a bit blurred, but okay.
We can.
Yeah, I just had one question about, you mentioned scalability, and one problem with scalability sometimes in the short term is the availability of storage or computing resources, like infrastructure. How do you plan on dealing with that that aspect of cloud offers and their, if you like, physical reality?
And also energy, maybe. So question goes to Francesco.
That's a very good question. Well, if you think about a big single cloud service provider or an hyperscaler, actually it's not just one single physical entity. It's a network of regions and point of delivery, call them data centers or whatever. So can we replicate the same model without creating a new big European champion like we were saying before? Yes, of course. Just change the paradigm and try to combine together as many players as they want, as long as you have a platform that allows some level of interoperability between them. This was not possible, technically speaking, a few years ago, but nowadays it is very possible. And there is some new trends in technology, particularly in the infrastructure area. I'm talking about containerization, which is for sure the way ahead, but nowadays is not still adopted. It is exactly, I've been having this discussion with some friends, exactly like virtualization, virtual machines 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Nobody believed that virtual machine could work. Now the world is on VMware. Otherwise, we didn't have the problem with Broadcom. But the same will happen with Kubernetes and containerization. So at that point, there would be liquid infrastructures. And the good news is that Dynamo is already implementing these mechanisms. So the participants to Dynamo will already be able to glue their Kubernetes cluster in a single virtual liquid infrastructure. But that's not all, of course. So there's a lot of new technologies that we are introducing to if you want to simulate the collaboration across the participants. Likewise, they were regions of the same single virtual cloud service provider. There is no difference. If you buy 10 companies and try to harmonize them, I tell you, you will lose 80% of the best people, 50% of the good customers, because they will not just stay with you with a new brand. You will lose market for 3 years, and maybe in 3 years' time, you will have reached a bigger market. That's pretty normal in M&A. But if instead we group together existing stuff, there's a big effort and technical complexity to build the platform. But the difference is that we can do it now. We don't need to wait any further. And technology helps. Of course, the advancement in technology, virtualization, and nowadays are, of course, very relevant.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Francesco, and thanks, Alice, for this